on the making of a book, where we are having three eminent authors from the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Dehradun. They say that role of a writer not to say what we all can say, but what we are unable to say. Though we know that reading is a conversation, all books talk, but a good book listens as well. So we are having some very important, very eminent scholars and authors with us who have penned down over the beautiful topics, the themes. So first of all, let me introduce Mr. Aloke Lal. We are also having the Maanas Lal and the Arvindar Singh. Aloke Lal is primarily an author in his current avatar. He has the two best-selling books, The Barabanki Narcos and The Murder in the Bylanes, to his credit. His parallel creative activity is painting, for which he has received international acclaim. He spent 37 precious years as a cop and was felicitated twice by the President of India for his services to the nation. Big round of applause to Mr. Aloke Lal. We welcome you, sir, in this session.
Hello.
We have Maanas Lal with us. Maanas Lal is what people would classify from mildly eccentric to downright crazy. He prefers the latter. A best-selling author and an award-winning visual artist, he finds comfort in the finer aspects of life, infinitely patient and principled in an annoying sort of way. He best expresses his emotional complexities with guitar in hand. He also loves teaching students who are ready to teach him in return. We welcome you, sir. A big round of applause to Maanas Lal. We are also having Mr. Arvindar Singh. Arvindar Singh has been a successful writer and an entrepreneur for well over 30 years. He has written a well-acclaimed biography of the former Prime Minister Morarji Desai, entitled Morarji Desai, A Profile in Courage, and authored a book on the cartoonist Rajinder Puri, as well as monograph on the Field Marshal Manik Shaw. He continues to pen his work in various publications. A big round of applause to Arvindar Singh. We welcome you, sir. So now, I would like to request Mr. Aloke Lal to begin the session. Thank you.
We had a decision before we started this session that Maanas is the one who will guide us what we have to do. So shall I hand it over to Maanas to say what he wants to say first of all? But before that, let me tell you what is Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. I'm sure most of you know about it, but why we are here is because the three of us are members of the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan Executive Committee of the Dehradun Kendra. And so we have requested value of words to allow us a session to talk about the making of books. So let Maanas take over from here on.
Thank you. It's a little distracting to see myself there on the screen. But anyways, I have the privilege of moderating these two co-panelists. We are sitting in order of seniority. So he's the senior most author, he is the junior author, and then is junior most a word?
Most junior.
I'm the most junior author. Yeah. So because I have a lot of respect for hierarchy, I would like to ask you the first question. The making of a book. I like the word making because I think writing a book doesn't necessarily do justice. There is a lot you have to put in apart from the writing. So when you think of making of a book, what would you think of this subject in itself?
Well, I presume that we'll be able to tell in the next 30 minutes or so how a book is born and how do we see the delivery of the book, who is the midwife doing it, and who is the doctor treating the patient being ultimately the reader, unfortunately. So this is what we are going to do, talking about how books come about. A lot of you write books. I can see a number of authors sitting here. So I'm nobody really to be telling you how to write books, but I also see a few youngsters here. And so it's nice to be talking about how books are made.
See, I think you have to ask this very witty man here, who's the midwife? Who's the midwife in the process?
Well, we will find in the course of this session who the midwife is.
Also, there is there is adequate suspense you can expect it from a true crime author. Um, so I'll come to the senior author now. Sir, when we speak of key ingredients, what do you think is the most essential ingredient in becoming an author? I know this is a tricky question, but who better than you to answer it?
No, well, I don't know if it's really tricky when one has been through so much of writing, reading.
If you could take the
in
mic
one's
closer.
life.
Mic,
Yeah,
mic, please.
sorry. You see, first of all, one of the basic ingredients I feel would be to have a passion for reading and writing. You have to be fond of reading to be a good writer. In my case, in the atmosphere in our house was very much conducive to a lot of reading. Most members of my family were fond of reading, and there was a lot of discussion about books. We were encouraged to buy books and also to visit libraries and so on. So first of all, you have to have a passion for reading and writing. Another ingredient is that you have to be clear with the topic you want to write in your book, whether it's a biography, whether it's about certain events, fiction related to romance, or certain events, like for example, it may be the mutiny, the freedom struggle, fiction during that time, so on and so forth. These, I would say, are main ingredients: an interest and a passion for writing, which comes out of good reading.
Right. So you can see how well prepared I am for this session. Because as a moderator, I make sure I have just one word written for every question. And now I am kind of confused. So when it comes to the research for a book, I think he touched upon reading a lot. So when you start researching for a subject, which may be a subject of true crime or in other cases, a book of non-fiction, I'll stick to non-fiction when I'm talking to you. Where do you go first? Is your resource material invariably a book? What if you have no book on the subject? How do you start digging out information and actually coming up with ideas which have not yet been written about?
Manas, I'll start with my first book. The book was called The Barabanki Narcos. So the seed of the book was in my tenure as superintendent of police in that district. So there was a lot I already knew about what was to be written. Then luckily I had Maanas and my wife Madhu, who both told me that तुम लिख सकते हो, कोशिश करो.
And now you know who the midwife is.
And now you know the midwives. So you have to have these midwives in the family itself or amongst friends. So the midwives told me that yes, there is a good chance of conception followed by a delivery. So the conception had to be supported by facts, so for which we did some research. I knew a lot about the subject because I was myself the superintendent of police where this crime had taken place. But then my friend Maanas was only too willing to help me with more research. Because when you are writing true crime or whatever is there in the records, then you must go back to the records because this memory may fail you at times and you may have wrong impressions carried over the years. So both of us went to Barabanki, we met a lot of people, we went to the police stations which were then my beat long ago in 1984 to 86, those 2 years. So it was indeed an interesting thing to do because in many places I saw my own name on the plaques that this particular police station building was built while I was posted there. So there's a plaque with my name. So those who are presently posted there were very excited to see me. They had heard about me, about the Barabanki Narcos exploits, and so it was nice to be back with them, and they were only too willing to show us the records. Some of the records were in terrible shape, as they would bear me out, and we had to really be very careful when turning pages. So those old-time records kept on paper, not on computer. So those were the times. It's indeed a lot of you who have done research in various libraries and so on know how difficult sometimes it is to find the right book, the right reference, and then to dive into it at the right place. With all the dust that is on top of the records. So I think I had a partner in crime or in unearthing crime, and he was with me all through.
I had to click a lot of pictures on that day with police personnel, so I remember it vividly. um, so, people often talk about writing a book, and I remember that when he was in the process of thinking about writing one, he said, "मैं किताब लिख तो दूंगा, but who will publish it? How do I actually get a publisher?" And for the longest time, he was convinced that he'll not find a publisher. And this is after he had been writing for the print media for 20, 25 years. So I think that one gap which all of us wish to bridge, in fact, there are people in the audience I know who ask me this question, that we have been penning down things on paper and we have, some resource material tucked away in a Word file, but who will actually bring our work out? Why would somebody put money on us? So because people have put money on you, please tell us, how did you make it happen?
Well, first I would just like to have a little word on research also, as Mr. Lal very rightly mentioned. You see, the more research you do, the better the outcome of your book is, the end product. There's a saying in the military that they say the more you sweat in peace, the less blood you shed in war. So a book also, the more research you do, the better is the outcome. I had to go to the Nehru Memorial Library. They've got a wonderful collection of newspapers on microfilm, I think of the last 100 years or so. And when I was doing one book on Morarji Desai and the other on Rajendra Puri, and that helped me a great deal. And other research also, which one generally does. As far as publishing goes, yes, it is not an easy job, particularly for new authors. Established authors, they have no problem. I remember Kushwant Singh once writing that any rubbish I write gets published. So he was an established author. So you have to run around a bit. There are now publishers who publish on payment, even good reputed names like Rupa, and I believe Bloomsbury also publishes on payment. And people do that, which is called vanity publishing. And quite a few new authors do it. Nowadays, the trend is to publish your own book and market it in Amazon and various other avenues. So these are the ways. I mean, it is difficult at first. It is not an easy job. So the options are open. Either you publish your own book or you go to a reputed publisher. You're very lucky if your first book is published by a reputed publisher without charging any money. But as you get on, you do a bit of networking, you have to run around, and then I think you carry on. That was my experience.
Yes, archives are important, but visiting archives will come in only after you have decided that a book has to be written on a particular subject, and for which you should have the confidence that you have this here. Because without this, creative activity is next to impossible. So for those youngsters who want to write books, you should have in you the confidence that yes, you have a strong enough top of the body, and from where you can emanate a lot of wisdom. So that is one. And the other is that you should be observant about what is happening around you. What are the incidents that tickle you? Who are the people who are interesting? Maybe you're traveling with somebody in a train and you find somebody very interesting, very different, and behaving in a manner which needs to be written about. So these are some of those inspirations which you can make and write. But you must have the ability, really, to put all those experiences into writing, because that is something that not everybody can do. And there is a couplet which I recall, Urdu में है, और वो बहुत सही है कि कुछ लोग तो वाकई खुद लिख लेते हैं, लेकिन कुछ लोग लिखने का नाम पैदा करना चाहते हैं. ये बहुत अच्छा लगता है जब किताब पर आपका नाम हो कि आपने लिखा है. तो कुछ लोग किसी उस्ताद से पूछते हैं कि एक कोई शेर अता कर दीजिए. अता मुझे एक प्लीज़ डोनेट कर दीजिए, एक शेर अपना मुझे दे दीजिए, तो मैं लोगों से कहूँगा ये मेरा शेर है. लेकिन दूसरा ये है कि और क्या कर सकते हैं. तो दिस कपलेट, कोई शायर हो मेहरबान तो गज़ल होती है ना. किसी शायर ने आपको गज़ल दे दी कि ले बेटा ले जा, और चोरी बन जाए जो ईमान तो गज़ल होती है ना. चोरी बन जाए जो ईमान तो गज़ल होती है. A lot of books are cut and paste books. Upendra ji is sitting here, and he is one who knows books from the top to the back, all covers, everything inside, all the words pass through him because he owns one of the finest bookshops we have. So what I'm trying to say is that these days a lot of cut and paste is being done. And you know, it is full of danger to be doing that, because that is infringement of rights and you will be hauled up for that.
So the question I had asked Mr. Arvindar Singh was about how one gets published. And I think I can add a little bit there that at least our journey has been majorly impacted by the entry of a literary agent in the process. So Sohail represents us. And for those of you who are looking at finding a publisher, getting a literary agent is not necessarily a bad idea, as some people might tell you. There are advantages to traditional publishing. And while some people prefer going the self-publication route, which is perfectly okay, there is also the opportunity of getting yourself the publisher you deserve through a literary agent. So do not hesitate in finding yourself an agent if you think that is the right way to go. Because to use a word which Aruna ma'am, an author, used in a session yesterday, the slush pile which you enter when you send an entry to a major publishing house is so huge that sometimes your entry is never read. So forget about whether you're deserving or not. You don't reach the right set of eyeballs. So it's extremely important to have the right people in your corner, and one of those people can be a literary agent. So my experience with Sohail has been particularly pleasant, and he has managed to get us some marquee publishers who have not asked us to pay them, but have also given us a reasonable advance.
Yeah. So it's not as if you have to spend money to get books published. The publishers give you money to write books.
Good.
So I've got some of my fellow authors from the agency he's talking about. The Book Bakers is the agency. So they would bear me out that it's not necessary to spend your own money. Rather, you will earn money out of what you write.
Yeah. The tendency is, I mean, if you go through an agent, it's quite nice. So you can, I mean, if you establish yourself in writing in the press and other places,
Actually, that brings me to something very important, what both of you said. Full-time writing. I'm a full-time writer. This is not something a lot of people are able to say. Because, let's face it, those who make money out of writing are not many. And I was being asked this question by someone today, that आप किताबें लिखते हैं तो बहुत पैसा मिलता है क्या किताब लिखने के लिए? And I said कि नहीं, तो फिर सवाल ये था कि अच्छा फिर ज़िंदगी कैसे चल रही है? तो और भी गम है ज़िंदगी में, is the only answer I have for that. But if someone wants to become a full-time writer, is there an easy way out? Is it possible to sustain yourself completely by just being a writer? Should a 15-year-old dream of being an author for the rest of his life and not having a backup plan?
Well, certainly the road is tough. The road is tough. If you read Ruskin Bond's autobiography, you will see that when he started out, I think as a young, probably in his late teens, and he was living in Ashra Hall in Dehradun. And he used to write articles and get quite a few rejection notes from publications. And I think it was the Illustrated Weekly which first published his book, The Room on the Roof, in a serialized form. And thereafter also he had a tough time. He was working with an NGO, he was working in England, and then he came back to full-time writing. I think it was in the last about 30, 35 years that he's been recognized as a celebrity author when Penguin came to India. So those who want to go into full-time writing, if they're quite wealthy, from a wealthy background, and probably it helps. But otherwise, the road is tough. But again, it is the passion. You have passion for something, and you don't mind the encumbrances on the way.
But that's not a safe option. If some 15-year-old comes to you and says, I want to become a full-time author, because Arthur really made so much of money that he has his own islands north of Canada and east of the US. So if people can make so much of money, why should I not become an author? So to be an Arthur Haley is not easy. There is only one Arthur Haley, and there are only a few of these Ruskin Bonds and such. Therefore, it is not a very safe option if you want to make this your entire career.
Yeah, another part of that answer I feel is that if you actually want to become a full-time author, then to an extent you have to be ready to go with the trend, the prevailing trend. A lot of us here would love to write just fiction, but we have written non-fiction books because that is the trend, and it has directly led us to a place where our books are being adapted to screen. Now that is where some degree of sustainability does come in, because the visual medium is much stronger, and it also involves a different dynamic of finance. But that is a place which you have to be willing to go to, and you have to be willing to struggle with producers who I can say very confidently are not an easy lot to deal with if you want, to make a career out of it. But then again, you have to have the confidence in your writing that it's good enough to actually be taken up for screen adaptations. So there are a lot of things which come into this, but I would agree with both these people that to the 15-year-old me, I'll say कि यार क्या कर रहे हो 32 साल की उम्र में, full time author बन गए हो.
Any questions? Any questions?
So they have not given. Has anybody given me a signal? अरे यार क्या कर रहे हो यार?
We got the signal that time is nearly over. But still, if there are questions, please do shoot.
Please, yes. Any questions?
Well, good evening, everybody, the panelists particularly. My main question to you is that, they say that authors tend to have a bit of hubris in them. They feel that they are writing the magnum opuses, We all feel ours is the best book and it's a bestseller in the making. But I read a very nice quote, and I'm going to just paraphrase it. It says that, readers don't buy your book. They buy the value they see in the book. So what is the value that you think authors should bear in mind while penning their books? All three of you can take it.
So I find everything I wrote yesterday pointless, honestly. So I am not the kind of person who can say that I like my writing a lot. If I go back to some pieces I wrote 5 years back, I feel very embarrassed about what I have written. But speaking for those who perpetually pen magnum opuses, I think it's good to be confident to a reasonable extent in life. But if that is the way you're going, then do not become a full-time author. And the other thing is that, yes, I agree with you to an extent that a lot of books which become bestsellers are not necessarily books which have literary merit in them. And they are picked up because of some kind of value the reader sees in the book. Now, how you bring about that value is an enigma. But then it's similar to the rise of a lot of things in life. You don't know why they are there. But Salman Khan is the biggest star in India.
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
I'm just to be more lucid and explain my question. I wanted to ask you, readers want to find some value in the books before they venture out and buy. It could be anything. So as established authors, what is your recommendation to the aspiring authors? What should they bear in mind to, bring value to the readers from their writing?
Yeah. My value now, exactly what I mean by value. What you value, what you have a passion about, you feel that the reading public will also enjoy that. And you put it in a way so that it attracts the attention. So if you say some trendy subject, some subject which is going around nowadays, I mean, it could be anything in politics, in religion, or in cinema, in anything of that kind. But then you have to have a passion about that subject. And I think if you put it properly, the value automatically comes into it. You
Yeah, I
don't have
agree
to
with
make an
him
effort.
that you'll write about a subject about which you are passionate. You are not in a marketplace where you're selling the most saleable good. You're writing, and if somebody likes it, he or she may pick it up.
But for off-the-shelf sales in bookstores, I think there are two things which are extremely important. One is a good blurb, because that's what everybody instantly reads. So when they flip a book, they see what the book is about. So I think writing blurbs is a talent in itself, and not everybody who writes a good book writes a good blurb. So I believe that some blurbs are very poorly worded, and they don't do justice to great books. And the other thing is that the cover of a book is extremely important. Always have the right people in your corner when it comes to designing a cover. And that is one place where I feel like authors can invest a little bit of money also. But you should have the right person to design your cover, because it is ultimately going to, pay you back in one way or the other. But that is the first impression you make on any reader. And therefore have the right art on your side in terms of visual art, and also make the most of your skills of making something brief. So these two.
सिर्फ खाती important नहीं है, लिफाफा भी important है.
So I had this thing to further, what you said, Manas, is that I understand a publisher would kind of jump at your work if it's the current trend. But don't you think that as writers, as children or people who want to write, it's not about following a trend, it's about what you want to write about. I mean, writing about your passion, whether it's the trend or not.
रूह की खुराक तो वही है जो otherwise लिखते हैं. तो I'm not necessarily writing what I love to write in terms of what's coming out as a published book, but I'm writing everything else, and I'm keeping it for another day. So nobody's stopping you from being a writer of what you want to write, but sometimes you have to write for yourself, and at other times you have to write for others. And I think that phase in life has to be very clearly understood. Would anybody else like to take this?
कुछ लोग गाना गाते हैं और उनके अलावा कोई नहीं जानता कि ये गाना हो रहा है.
आप फिर देख रही हैं मुझे तो.
Thank you very much, all of you. I know that this is the tail end of the entire festival, and there's another big session on, it's about to start maybe, which is the valedictory session. So I can understand that many of you would be itching to get out of this place to go there, but yet you have spent such a lot of time with us and heard us talk about a subject in which some of you are interested, something very satisfying. Thank you very much to you. Thank you.
Yeah.
कोई इंसान मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट्स लिखता है, कोई पोइट्री के फॉर्म में या स्टोरी के फॉर्म में, है ना. लाइक बहुत सारी यंगस्टर्स है, मैं भी उसे फिर तो फेसबुक, इंस्टा, तरह के तमाम मीडियम है हमारे पास जिसमें हम शो करते हैं. और सिर्फ एक फ्रेंड सर्किल होता है जो हमें कमेंडेशन देते हैं सब कुछ. लेकिन किसी एक इंसान को, एक 25 साल के यूथ को वो लिखता है, उसके पास एक बुक पब्लिकेशन की तरफ कब जाना चाहिए उसको?
हुजूर, ये पिक्चर आपको YouTube पे देखनी पड़ेगी, क्योंकि नहीं तो रिपीट हो जाएगा, बिकॉज बाकी ऑडियंस ने ये पूरी बात सुनी है. बट मैं आपसे सिर्फ ये कह सकता हूँ कि अगर आपको अपनी स्क्रिप्ट में विश्वास है तो आप पब्लिशर को भेजिए या कोई आप किसी एजेंट के थ्रू भी जा सकते हैं. ये शॉर्ट आंसर है सवाल का. लेकिन अगर आप हमारे सेशन देखेंगे जो शायद कुछ घंटों में यूट्यूब पे मिल जाएगा आपको, यू विल गेट योर आंसर.
That will be it. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
very
sir.
much.
We are